Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. So today we're going to look at something pretty cool. Can a small Finnish company revolutionize the global wind energy market? That's the question. And the company's called Windside. And wow, you guys sent us a ton of stuff. We have brochures, technical reports, case studies.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to go through.
So we're here to kind of help cut through all that and figure out what's really going on at this company.
Yeah. I think what's interesting right off the bat is just that, I mean, Windside's been around for over 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, quietly building a global presence with a unique approach. They've already got installations in over 45 countries.
Yeah.
I mean, from Antarctica to the Sahara Desert.
Wow, that's impressive. That's a huge reach.
Yeah.
I have to admit, before I looked at this stuff, I had no idea how different their technology is.
Right.
I mean, you think of wind turbines. I think of those giant, turbines on sprawling wind farms.
Yeah.
Windside's turbines seem to be a whole different animal.
Yeah, they really are. They specialize in what are called vertical axis wind turbines,
Okay.
or VAWTs. So picture like a giant corkscrew standing upright.
Okay.
That's essentially what we're talking about.
All right.
And this design allows them to capture wind from any direction,
Oh, wow.
even turbulent gusts.
Okay, so I'm picturing this corkscrew,
Yeah.
but how does that design, I mean, they call it a spiral vane structure,
Yeah.
but how does that actually make them more efficient?
So imagine you're like holding a pinwheel
Okay.
and you're running with it.
Yeah.
You're only going to get power when the wind hits it head on, right?
Right?
Now imagine that pinwheel is twisted like a DNA helix.
No.
Suddenly it can spin no matter which way you're running.
I see.
Windside's turbines work similarly. So those spiral vanes capture wind energy regardless of which way the wind is blowing.
That's such a clear way to explain it. I get it now.
Good.
So they're less picky about wind direction, but what other advantages do they have over, those traditional horizontal axis turbines?
Yeah.
The ones we see everywhere.
So there are actually quite a few. So first of all, they're incredibly quiet.
Oh, really?
I'm talking virtually silent,
Wow.
like somewhere between 0 and 5 decibels.
Wow.
There's actually a story in one of the reports where researchers were doing noise level testing, and they had to turn off their ventilation fans to get an accurate reading because the turbines were so quiet, they were getting picked up by the microphone.
That is great. That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I live near a wind farm.
Right.
Let me tell you, those things are not exactly known for their, peaceful hum.
Exactly. And that noise pollution is a major criticism of,
Yeah.
traditional wind farms.
Yeah.
And then there's the bird issue.
Oh, yeah.
The concern that birds are colliding with those spinning blades.
Right. That's always a concern with large turbines.
Well, Windside's design pretty much eliminates that risk.
Oh.
Their turbines rotate much slower, and they have a smaller surface area moving through the air.
So it's just inherently safer for birds.
Yeah, much safer.
Okay, so quieter, bird-friendly, any other environmental benefits?
Well, the manufacturing process for VAWTs typically requires less material
Okay.
than for traditional turbines.
Oh, interesting.
So that can lower the overall environmental footprint.
Right.
And they also require less land for installation,
Oh.
especially with Windside's kind of innovative approach to wind farms.
Okay, now I'm really curious about this approach to wind farms.
Yeah.
What makes them different?
So traditional wind farms, they're often these sprawling installations. They require huge tracts of land.
Yeah, for sure.
But Windside has developed something called a linear power station solution.
Linear power station, what is that?
So it's pretty ingenious, actually. Instead of spreading turbines out over a wide area, they install them in a line,
Oh.
like along a road or a property boundary. And this linear arrangement allows them to harness those turbulent winds and wind coming from multiple directions,
Right.
which we know their turbines are really good at capturing.
Oh, that makes sense. Less land required.
Yeah.
More efficient use of turbulent wind.
Right.
It sounds like they've really thought this through.
Yeah.
But can this linear approach compete with traditional wind farms when it comes to energy production?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And while, their individual turbines might be smaller than those giants you see on traditional wind farms,
Right.
the overall energy output can be comparable,
Oh, wow.
especially when you consider they can be installed in places where traditional turbines just wouldn't work.
Okay, now I'm starting to see the appeal here.
Yeah.
So they've got this unique technology,
Yeah.
this creative solution to land use. They're operating globally.
Yep.
But how are they planning to grow their business?
Right.
What's their strategy for competing in this market?
So Windside is focusing on 3 key areas for growth.
Okay.
First, they're targeting the kind of booming green building market,
Okay.
especially in North America.
Okay.
And they're promoting their turbines for integration into new construction projects.
That makes a lot of sense. If these things are as quiet as they claim,
Yeah.
they could be ideal for urban environments.
Exactly. They can be seamlessly incorporated into rooftops, facades, even noise barriers along highways.
Oh, wow.
And they already have some pretty impressive examples of, building integrated projects around the world.
Yeah, you're going to have to tell me more about that later.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
What's the second area?
So the second area is, those linear power stations we talked about.
Right.
They see a lot of potential there, especially for kind of small-scale commercial applications.
So instead of powering a whole city, they're focusing on powering businesses, factories.
Exactly, things like that.
Okay.
And, they've already got a strong foothold in Europe with this approach.
Right.
And they're looking to expand into new markets in Asia and the Middle East.
Interesting. So 2 down, what's the third area of growth?
All right, so this is where things get really ambitious.
Okay.
Windside's aiming to play with the big boys,
Oh, wow.
the major utility-scale wind farm developers.
Wow.
So they're developing larger megawatt-class turbines
Okay.
that can compete with the giants of the industry.
Wow. That's a bold move. I mean, are they really up to the challenge?
It certainly won't be easy.
Yeah.
But they're investing heavily in research and development,
Okay.
collaborating with universities like the University of Vasa in Finland
Okay.
to, refine their designs and kind of push the boundaries of what's possible with VAWT technology.
Right.
And they claim their turbines can produce more energy per swept area than any other wind turbine on the market.
Wow. That's a big claim, but if they can back it up, it could be huge. I mean, this is all fascinating stuff. I'm realizing I knew very little about vertical axis wind turbines before this deep dive.
Yeah, it's a technology that often gets overshadowed by the more familiar horizontal axis turbines.
Right.
But Windside is making a compelling case for why VAWTs deserve a closer look.
I'm definitely convinced. But before we get too carried away with, their growth plans and all this, let's dig a little deeper into their existing projects.
Okay.
Their impact on kind of communities around the world. I'm especially curious about those building integrated projects you mentioned.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we've established Windside is not your average wind energy company. They've got this really interesting technology, and they're thinking outside the box with those linear power stations, and they're aiming high with their growth strategy. But what I'm really curious about is their impact. They've got installations in over 45 countries, so they must be making a difference somewhere.
Oh, they absolutely are. And one of the most compelling aspects of Windside's work is their focus on rural electrification.
Bringing power to communities that are off the grid. I've read a bit about that. It seems like a perfect fit for their technology.
Many remote communities lack access to reliable electricity, and that limits their economic opportunities, their quality of life.
For sure.
And Windside's turbines, especially those smaller models, are relatively easy to transport and install in these areas.
Plus, they don't need those massive transmission lines that traditional wind farms require to connect to the grid.
Exactly. And because they can operate efficiently at low wind speeds, they're a viable option, even in places where wind resources might not be as strong.
So they're bringing clean, reliable energy to these communities, and that has kind of a ripple effect on education, healthcare, economic development. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It really is. And it's not just about rural electrification. Windside has also played a role in disaster relief efforts.
Really? How so?
Imagine a natural disaster strikes and knocks out power grids, leaves communities in the dark.
Yeah.
Windside's turbines can be quickly deployed to these areas, providing a much-needed source of energy for hospitals, shelters, emergency response teams.
Wow, that's incredible. I hadn't thought about that application before. It's like a portable power solution that can be set up in a matter of hours.
Exactly. And because they're so quiet, they don't add to the stress and chaos of an already difficult situation.
Right. Okay, so we've got rural electrification, disaster relief. Are there any other ways Windside is making a social impact?
Well, they're also creating jobs and stimulating economic activity in the communities where they operate.
Yeah, that makes sense. They need people to manufacture, install, and maintain those turbines.
Precisely. And they're committed to working with local communities to create training and employment opportunities.
It's a win-win situation. They're providing clean energy and boosting local economies. It's a far cry from those massive wind farms that are often criticized for disrupting local communities.
Yeah, they're taking a very different approach.
Yeah.
One that prioritizes community engagement and collaboration.
Okay, so we've talked about their impact in rural communities, but I'm also really interested in those building integrated projects you mentioned earlier. Can you tell me more about those?
Absolutely. Windside has been a pioneer in integrating their turbines into buildings, and they've got some truly impressive examples around the world.
I remember you mentioned the Pearl River Tower in China. Isn't that a skyscraper?
It is. It's a 309-meter skyscraper in Guangzhou, China, and it incorporates Windside turbines into its design, generating clean energy right there in the heart of the city.
Wow, that's amazing. I bet most people working in that building don't even realize they're being powered, at least in part, by wind energy.
Probably not, and that's the beauty of it. These turbines are so quiet and discreet that they just blend seamlessly into the urban environment.
So it's not just about slapping a turbine on the roof. They're actually integrating them into the architecture of the building.
Exactly. They've also done some really interesting projects with smaller buildings. There's a Hesburger restaurant in Finland, for example, that uses a Windside turbine to generate a portion of its electricity.
A Hesburger, that's a fast food chain, right?
It is, and it's a great example of how, businesses can incorporate wind energy into their operations.
It's not just about these massive utility scale projects. There's a real opportunity for businesses, schools, even homeowners to contribute to the clean energy transition.
Absolutely. And Windside's technology makes that possible.
I'm curious, what are some of the other notable building integrated projects they've done?
Well, there's the Veki Environment House in Helsinki, which is a model for sustainable building practices. They've also done projects with supermarkets, bakeries, even a science center in Estonia.
Wow, the range is pretty impressive. It seems like they're not afraid to experiment and find creative ways to apply their technology.
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes them so fascinating. They're constantly pushing the boundaries and exploring new possibilities.
Okay, so they're making a difference in rural communities, they're providing clean energy solutions for businesses, and they're leading the way in building integrated wind power. But what about the technology itself? What makes these vertical axis turbines so unique?
Well, we've touched on the spiral vane structure, but there are other key features that set them apart. For example, they're gearless.
Gearless, you mean there are no gears connecting the rotor to the generator?
That's right. And this has some significant advantages. First, it reduces wear and tear, which means lower maintenance costs and a longer lifespan.
That makes sense. Less moving parts, less to go wrong.
Exactly. And it also makes them incredibly quiet, which we've already established is a major plus.
Right, so no clunky gears, super quiet. Are there any other technical advantages?
Well, they're also designed to be incredibly durable. They use advanced materials like fiberglass, carbon fiber, marine-grade aluminum to withstand extreme weather conditions.
Okay, so they're built to last, but are they as efficient as traditional turbines when it comes to converting wind energy into electricity?
That's a question that often comes up. And while the efficiency of any wind turbine depends on a variety of factors, Windside claims their turbines can be just as efficient, especially at those low wind speeds where traditional turbines struggle.
So they're quieter, more durable, potentially more efficient at low wind speeds. It sounds like they've got a pretty compelling case.
They do, and they're backed by a growing body of research and real-world data.
Speaking of research, I know they're collaborating with universities on a number of projects. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, one of their key research partners is the University of Vaasa in Finland, and they're working on a variety of projects, from optimizing turbine design to developing new control systems.
So they're not just sitting back and resting on their laurels, they're actively investing in the future of their technology.
Exactly, and they're not afraid to push the boundaries. One of their most ambitious projects is the development of megawatt-class turbines that can compete with the giants of the industry.
Right, we talked about that earlier. Those are the ones they're hoping will allow them to enter the large-scale wind farm market.
Right, and it's a huge undertaking, but they're making progress.
It's inspiring to see a company that's so committed to innovation, but all this research and development must cost a lot of money. How are they funding all of this?
Well, they're a privately held company, so they're not beholden to shareholders like some of the bigger players, but they're also attracting investment from venture capitalists and impact investors who see the potential of their technology.
So they're appealing to investors who are not just looking for financial returns, but also for social and environmental impact.
Exactly, and that's a growing trend. More and more investors are recognizing that sustainability and profitability are not mutually exclusive.
It's encouraging to see. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their technology, their impact, their research and development, even their financials. But I think there's one big question we haven't really addressed yet.
And what's that?
What's Windside's ultimate vision for the future? Where do they see themselves in, say, 10 or 20 years?
That's a great question, and one that I think they're still figuring out. But one thing is clear. They're not content to be a niche player. They want to be a major force in the global wind energy market.
So they're thinking big, but how do they plan to get there?
Well, they're betting on their technology. They believe that vertical axis wind turbines have the potential to disrupt the industry and become the dominant technology in the years to come.
That's a bold prediction. What makes them so confident?
Well, they point to a number of factors. First, their turbines are inherently quieter and more bird-friendly than traditional turbines. Second, they can be installed in a wider range of locations, including urban environments and areas with low wind speeds. And third, they believe they can achieve higher energy yields per swept area, especially with their larger megawatt-class turbines.
So they're not just aiming to compete, they're aiming to win.
Exactly, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're investing heavily in research and development, expanding into new markets, and building partnerships with key players in the industry.
It's a fascinating story, and one that I think is only just beginning to unfold.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more about Windside in the years to come, but for now, I think we've covered just about everything we can in this deep dive.
We've certainly explored a lot of ground.
But there's always more to learn, and I'm sure you, our listener, have some questions of your own.
Absolutely. We've included some links in the show notes to help you continue your Windside journey.
We encourage you to visit their website, read their technical reports, and explore their case studies.
And if you have any questions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
We're always eager to hear from our listeners.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Windside.
It's been a pleasure to guide you through this fascinating story.
And we hope you'll stay tuned for more deep dives into the world of knowledge and discovery.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring. We've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into Windside, from their unique vertical axis turbines to their ambitious plans for the future. But as we wrap up here, I want to kind of shift gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay. Yeah. What are you thinking?
Well, Windside's clearly doing some innovative and impactful things.
Yeah.
But they're also a relatively small player in what is a massive industry.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious to get your take on how they fit into the broader landscape of wind energy and, the global transition to renewable energy sources.
That's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that the renewable energy sector is constantly evolving.
Right.
So what's considered cutting edge today might be commonplace tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
Windside is certainly challenging the status quo with their technology and their approach, but they're not alone.
So you're saying there are other companies out there exploring similar technologies?
There are vertical axis. Wind turbines aren't exactly new.
Right.
But Windside has really taken the concept and run with it.
Yeah.
Refining the design, developing innovative applications, and building a global presence.
Right, and they're focusing on areas where traditional wind turbines might not be suitable.
Yeah.
Like urban environments and areas with low wind speeds. Exactly. They've carved out a niche for themselves, and they're doing it well. But to really make a dent in the global energy market, they're going to need to continue to innovate and scale up their operations.
And that's where their ambitious plans for megawatt-class turbines come in.
Right. If they can successfully develop and deploy these larger turbines, they'll be able to compete head-to-head with the major players in the utility-scale wind farm market.
But it's there are a lot of challenges ahead, both technical and financial.
Absolutely. Scaling up any new technology is never easy, especially in a complex and competitive industry like wind energy.
Right, but if they succeed, the implications could be huge. Imagine a world where wind turbines are no longer these, giant noisy eyesores that people complain about.
Yeah.
Imagine cities powered by silent turbines integrated into buildings and infrastructure.
It's a compelling vision and one that Windside is working hard to make a reality.
I have to admit, I'm rooting for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're a company with a strong sense of purpose, and they're not afraid to take risks. They're also a company that's willing to collaborate and share their knowledge. I think that's one of their biggest strengths.
I agree. They're not just trying to build a business. They're trying to build a movement.
Yeah.
They want to inspire others to embrace renewable energy and create a more sustainable future.
And they're doing it in a way that's both practical and inspiring.
Okay, so let's wrap this up.
All right.
What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into Windside?
Okay.
What do we want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that innovation can come from unexpected places. Here's this small Finnish company that's challenging conventional thinking about wind energy and making a real impact on communities around the world.
Right, and they're proving that sustainability and profitability are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
They're building a successful business while also addressing some of the world's most pressing challenges.
Absolutely.
I think another key takeaway is the importance of collaboration. Windside's success is due in part to their willingness to partner with universities, research institutions, other companies.
Right. They're not trying to do it all alone.
Yeah.
They're leveraging the expertise and resources of others to accelerate their progress.
Absolutely. And finally, I think Windside's story is a reminder that we need to be open to new ideas and new approaches.
Yeah.
The transition to a clean energy future will require us to think outside the box and embrace innovation wherever we find it.
Well said. And who knows, maybe Windside's journey will inspire others to take on the challenge and create their own disruptive solutions.
That's the hope, isn't it? That by shining a light on companies like Windside, we can spark a wave of innovation and accelerate the transition to a more sustainable future.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Windside.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope you found it informative and inspiring. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring this topic and learning more about the companies and technologies that are shaping the future of energy.